Chairman Fitzpatrick, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Capital Improvement Plan and Budget Planning Workshop. Today is January 24th, 2022. Madam Manager, are you present?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. And I am at the podium.
Okay.
If that works. Are you ready for us to begin?
We are.
Okay, and if we can just start with a roll call. Jana?
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Here.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Here.
Commissioner Colson,
Here.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Here.
Commissioner McGawhorn,
Here.
Commissioner Nunley,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Present.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Here.
Commissioner White. Commissioner White. Everyone is present with the exception of Commissioner White.
Okay, thank you. And if you'll give me just a moment, I'll have Dawn come out and do a screen share so that we can begin your presentation this morning for your capital improvement plan and budget planning workshop. While she's coming down to do that screen share, I want to thank you all for adapting to the virtual environment. Once again, as we get through the month of January and the uptick that we've seen in COVID-19 cases. And so we appreciate your adapting to this format. Can you all see that screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thanks.
Sure.
So I'll jump right in then, unless you have any questions before we begin. All right, so briefly to start out with the purpose of our workshop today is really threefold. Every January, you'll do your capital improvement planning. We call it the CIP Budget and Planning Workshop. And the first thing we do at this meeting is discuss and adopt Pitt County's mission, vision, values, and goals for the 22-23 fiscal year coming up. So we'll go over those. We'll then review the 22-23 budget outlooks and drivers, and then we'll review and discuss capital planning. So at the end of today, we're not looking to allocate any funds for any particular projects, but this is the first step in your budget planning process. And as many of you know, the budget process for 22-23 started immediately after the adoption of 21-22.
Madam Manager,
We're getting some
I'm sorry
interference.
to interrupt, but I'm getting a lot of feedback.
I am
Okay,
too.
let's see what. Okay, we will look at that, and if each person will mute themselves when you're not speaking, we will keep an eye on that on this end as well and see if that works. And please do interrupt if it comes back again. To be sure that we have everybody's participation, please also feel free to use that raise hand feature. In the event you are muted, we'll then know to be sure you have the capability to speak on this end as well. Are you seeing a screen that says mission, vision, values, and goals? Well, they're all muted now.
No, ours still shows the cover page for the CIP.
Okay,
I see it over to the left of the screen. All the things that you're going to share are over to the left of the screen, but all I see is the introductory to.
There we go.
okay. Bear with our technical difficulties and we will see how we can get this presentation to move through. We can see on your screen that it's not. Oh, well, now there. Oh, there you go.
There it is.
Mhm. It doesn't go. Thank you again for your patience. Here comes Naomi to save the day. Crisis averted. Thank you to our Public Information Office. Okay, can everybody hear me and see a screen that says mission, vision, values, and goals?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll pick up again. And just as a reminder, so today is the first step in the budget planning process that directly involves the Board of Commissioners. We're starting in January for the budget that we're going to adopt effective July 1. And what we're going to present to you today is the capital projects. Those are projects that are over $100,000. And what we're letting you know is what the requests are from the departments, how our senior leadership team has vetted these projects. We'll share our recommendations, and then we'll look for feedback from the board. So we'll know which of these projects to include in your 22-23 budget as we move forward in that budget preparation. So a preliminary step to help guide us in your goals, values, and projects for this upcoming budget. The Pitt County's current mission statement is that it is the mission of Pitt County government to enhance the health, safety, and well-being of our community by advocating for and providing quality services in a friendly and cost-effective manner. That has been your mission statement for a number of years. I'll go over your goals, your values, and your priorities, and then at the end, would like to open it up for conversation as to whether or not the board wants to keep these in place, modify them in any way, and then we'll need a motion. Your vision has been that Pitt County is a leader in the state and the best in the East. And our values are presented in a bullet point format where we believe that our purpose is public service, and we adhere to the following. The first bullet relates to honesty and behavior that is consistent with our mission. The second, that we recognize and promote competence, excellence, and open communication, that we value supporting each other and working towards our goals, maintaining an open government that is a good steward of public resources, and that we support decision-making that is deliberate, conscientious, and based on fact. We apply those values to your priorities, with the top being your highest priority, all of these being high priorities, but to the extent they need to be ordered, Pitt County has consistently placed education as its top priority, followed closely behind by public safety, economic development, human services, facility and space needs, infrastructure improvement, and then recreational activities. And this is a little small, but if you can see on your screen, our goals, and they relate to each of your priorities. As it relates to education, that we fund to ensure quality education. With regard to public safety, that we do so through enhanced community safety programs and emergency services. For economic development, that we advance opportunities for the county. Under human services, that we enrich the quality of life for our citizens through opportunities for improved health, welfare, and environmental concerns. And you'll recall we added that in last year. To address facility and space needs of all county government programs, including general government, public schools, and our community college. To champion infrastructure improvements and to support the provision and access to recreational activities for our citizens. So there you have your mission, your vision, your values, your priorities, and goals. And at this time, I'd open it up for any discussion by the board if you would like to affirm those, change those. And when we reach a consensus, we'd need a motion to approve our final product. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Madam Manager. Anybody have any changes or different things that they would like to make towards the goals? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr.
Chairman.
Chair.
Motion to approve.
All right, looks like we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? If not, Madam Clerk?
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner McGlawhorn,
yes,
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Looks like Janice, you're up again.
Yes, thank you so much. And I do feel good about that mission, vision, values, and goals is capturing what we do and what we are about. So thank you for that. The next thing I'd like to do this morning is talk about our budget planning process and some of the impacts that result as a result of this process. On your next slide, you will see our budget planning calendar. And today, January 24th, is where it starts from the commissioner's involvement. And this is your capital improvement workshop, where we have now affirmed our board's goals for 22-23. And we'll spend the rest of the morning talking about projects that may be included in your 22-23 budget. We'll follow this up in the month of March, where we will receive all of the budgets from the different departments within county government and agencies. On March 4th, budget requests will be due from those departments. In the month of March, county staff and senior leadership team will be reviewing that budget, balancing that budget, and meeting with department heads one-on-one to discuss their needs and how they fit into our available resources. By the end of March, all of those budget documents come back to me for review, and in April, we'll have sit-down conferences. By the end of April, we will have a recommended budget developed by the county manager, and we will send the revised budget requests back to departments for their review. In May, we'll present those budgets to you as a Board of County Commissioners, and then May 3rd to 5th will be that week of budget workshops, where we'll meet in the mornings to go over each of those requests in greater detail. We'll open the second week for workshops if necessary, although in all of my time here, I don't ever recall going into the second week for workshops. On June 7th, we have scheduled a public hearing for citizen input on the budget. And on June 20th, if you don't adopt the budget on June 7th, we hope to have a balanced budget adopted by June 20th to meet our deadline to have it effective July 1. So that's your process for the remaining calendar year. Some of the things that are driving this year's budget. We're in a new normal with COVID-19. You will see ongoing requests for PPE and other things as it relates to our supplies and our operations in a new environment. I'm going to say hopefully at the post end of this pandemic. We want to maintain current levels of service, reviewing to be sure they're necessary and provided efficiently. And then we'll see what other levels of service are necessary going forward. We want to review our fund balance levels and utilization of fund balance to assure that we maintain within the board's stated policy or goal of 18 to 20%. We need to look at school capital needs, both at the K-12 level and community college level. And then the other thing driving this budget is our national economy. We'll keep an eye towards inflation. We'll keep an eye towards economic impacts on the county's ability to fund projects, maintain its cash flow, and potentially impacts on borrowing money if that's appropriate. So why do we always talk about fund balance, and why is that so important to the county? Our fund balance is the amount of money in the county's savings account. And that amount of money, so long as we stay within the board's stated goal of 18-20%, positively impacts our credit rating. When the county goes to borrow money, the credit rating agencies will review us, and they'll want to look to be sure that we are have enough money in our rainy day fund and that we are saving it in accordance with the board's goals. It will also impact our interest rate on any future debt, should that be from a bank loan or otherwise. Your fund balance allows us to maintain cash flow to pay the day-to-day bills of the county. It also gives us stability in our investment income. Although investment income has been and continues to be at its lowest, as we've seen in a number of years, Having that set amount in your fund balance that's invested in a very conservative way allows stability in that investment income. It gives us cash for emergencies in the event of weather events or otherwise, and it provides opportunities when we have cash on hand to take advantage of if we didn't have that cash on hand. Works very similar to anyone's savings account, but maintaining the county's fund balance and assuring appropriate utilization of fund balance is necessary in order for us to have a balanced budget and to maintain strong fiscal health for Pitt County, which is our goal. With that, I will turn it over to Brian Barnett to go into our capital improvement process. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Janice. Brian, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
All right, floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start off with our capital improvement process. For most of you all, this is not your first run at this, so not much has changed from a process standpoint. As Janice mentioned, we are looking at projects $100,000 or higher. We do put this together in our list, which we refer to as our capital improvement plan or our CIP. This list starts off primarily with the budget staff and our county engineer. And then from there, they bring together the list with the senior management team and we review it starting in November. We take another look in December, and then we put it all together for you all today here in January. As Janice also mentioned, this is the first step of your involvement into our budget process. And as we move through today, we will relook at the CIP again as part of our workshops in May. And then hopefully in June on the 7th, when we adopt the budget, we will also adopt the CIP. So I'm going to get right into our recommended projects. You should have your notebooks. So if you need additional detail on a project outside of the meeting today, you can always refer to that. The notebooks are in order of the presentation. We also have the full senior leadership team here. So if there's a very specific question that you may have that I may not be able to answer, I may have one of them step up and fill in any gaps. And also I want to remind you that today you all, in essence, push forward the CIP. So anything that clears today has not cleared the entire budget hurdle. We still review it as we review all of our other requests in April and March to make sure financially everything's going to be feasible. But this is the first step in moving a capital project into the operating budget. So like in the past, we break these into our functional areas. They don't necessarily match up departmentally as we do most of the year, but with CIP, we like it to match our financials. So we look at it from a functional standpoint, and the very first group is our general government. Again, if you have any questions as I move through these, you can either unmute or do the raise hand. I'd actually prefer you do the unmute since some of you have your screens off and just jump in and ask away. But our first project on our list is our annual vehicle replacement plan. In the past, outside of the current fiscal year, this has followed a model of 2 years in a row. We borrow money, and then the third year is a cash funded year, which is typically dramatically less than our borrow year. This fiscal year, we were able to do the full amount from cash instead of going out and borrowing money. And so our CIP starts off with that same pattern. And if we get through the budget process this year, the $665,000 for vehicle replacements, if we're able to cash fund it, then that's something we would probably recommend for you to consider. But if not, we'll fall back to our traditional schedule and look for our bank loan. So these are our vehicles that are split typically 60-40 between the sheriff's office and the rest of the county departments. Our next project is our facilities capital maintenance. This is the work primarily headed up by Buildings and Grounds, where we go around and look at all of our primary routine physical capital needs. You'll see $400,000 this year. We upped that amount because we have some additional work that we'd like to knock out at the Leroy James Farmers Market on top of our traditional roofs, HVACs, and carpet replacements. Our third project is our security upgrades. This is primarily headed up by risk management. It was a process of looking at to make sure that from an access standpoint that we were secure within our facilities. We've done quite a bit of work on this, and we still have some more. And then as technology changes, we have money set aside for future years. Here's another case where we've upped the amount compared to our traditional amount of around $100,000. We'd like to finish out a project at the courthouse to upgrade security cameras to help secure that facility. So you will see a significant jump up to 337,000. And then our last project on this list for general government is our Uptown development study. As we move pieces around in our Uptown facilities and at the courthouse, we have set aside some money to look at how to best utilize that space. The beauty of moving folks out of space, it frees up space, which, these are all areas that we're on the hook for from a capital standpoint. So this just puts us ahead of the plan to make sure we have the best plan in place to utilize that space. So hopefully it's cheaper than having to come back and build new facilities. But this is a continuation of what we started this year and finishing out as we move additional people out of the courthouse and our Uptown facilities. Rounding out general government, we have our broadband placeholder. This $6 million is a placeholder. This is a number that we actually started with pre-pandemic. We know how important broadband out into the rural parts of the county are, so we have decided to keep this number in here. This may be a combination of county and ARP funds, but we thought it was important enough to maintain it, to move it forward through our budget process as we look at different avenues of partnering with different groups to provide that broadband service out into the rural areas. And then finally, a bucket truck for buildings and grounds. We have a 20-year-old truck we'd like to look at replacing. So this would replace that truck. This allows us to do any of that roof work, light work on our light poles, any type of work that we have to send somebody up high. So this is what the truck would be used for. So I'll pause before we move into public safety just to see if there was any questions on general government. If not, I'm going to move us right into public safety. My mouse will allow it. There we go. Public safety. Start off with public safety. This is another one of those standard projects that we put in every year. This is on the EMS side. This is tied to our EMS tax, but this is the money that we've set aside for vehicles and other EMS needs. We're keeping that amount at the $375,000. We upped it this year from the $350,000, but we think $375,000 was a good number. The second project on our list is replacement upgrades for the sheriff's radios. This $1.8 million project will allow us to get our remaining radios at the sheriff's office up on the Viper system. This will make them TDMA compliant so that we can stay up to date and be able to communicate not just across our network, but across the state. And then finally, with the sheriff's office on their communication system, they have some equipment. It's not recommended for next year, but in the future year, we will be looking at some equipment upgrades to take some of their analog equipment to more a digital format as we move into fiscal year 2024. We wouldn't have public safety if we didn't talk about the needs at the detention center. Actually, Commissioner Perkins-Williams, you had a question?
Yes, I would like to know, is that upgrade a part of cameras? Because in today's time, the cameras on the deputies are important, I think, for public safety, and it'll give some assurance within the public. So is that included there?
So Commissioner Perkins-Williams, no, that's not part of cameras. A couple of years ago, you all did do cameras for the deputies. And then we looked at, if you remember, we looked at a plan to allow us to update that as needed. And we've implemented that. So as of now, the sheriff has all of the deputies with body cameras on them. I do not think that's the case at the detention center, but no, this $155,000 that you see here in 2024 is part of their communication system upgrades and not the cameras. The same with the Viper system. That's a whole different item. If that's something you want us to look at, then obviously we'll reach out to the sheriff's office and we could have them crunch some numbers.
Thank you very much. I wanted the public to know because I received that question about body cameras. And this is a good way for the public to get some assurance about what's happening. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. What we like to refer to as your road deputies. All of them do have cameras on them. So the public can be assured that when those folks go out, they have the cameras and the tools to record anything that were to happen with our deputies. So with the detention center, they are looking at doing some upgrades. We decided this fiscal year to start putting aside a set amount of money. So we've set aside $120,000 to do upgrades within the facilities. This is typically going to be like we look at when we look at our facility maintenance countywide, but this is more specific for the detention center. So this is going to be HVACs, roofs, and then they want to do some computer upgrades to some of their systems to look at, to make sure everything is backed up in case there's a power shortage or an outage. Next, we have our detention center boilers. This is a pretty impressive upgrade. It will take 2 boilers out and will actually upgrade to 8 condensing boilers. So that will make the facility more efficient. And then in 2024, we'll be looking at 1 chiller, taking 2 chillers that we have and creating a 3rd one to help with backup and redundancy. So are there any, Commissioner Perkins-Williams, is your hand still up or is that a new question?
I just put it back up. I want to make sure I put it up and
Okay.
down when I want to speak. Thank you very much for noticing. Another question I've had, I want to get all these public questions I received and holding in the back of my head. That cell block, since you're getting ready to move away from the detention center, what was that? Cell block E, F, E?
Yeah. E block.
E. And I have a resident who asked me about that from time to time. And so I want you to, is that included in that? And where does that?
I believe you paused, you muted yourself in the middle of the question.
Took my question down. I wanted you to mention, is the cell block upgrade for E, is it still non-usable?
So I believe it's usable, but it's not part of the CIP. And I think
Okay.
Janice is actually going to jump in real quick.
Well, maybe that's something that the sheriff will share with the public, since this is a public session, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
It is, and if I could just add to that, that E block is a usable block. It's a question of staffing for our own use. And we defer to the sheriff and how she chooses to operate that space. And she's made recommendations with regard to the use of that space in the past. So I think those are terrific questions to ask the sheriff during this budget process. But that space is usable space. It's just not staffed. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Perkins-Williams. Any other public safety questions before we move on to our next functional area? Well, our next area is our economic and physical development. One of the things that you all may remember not too long ago, the Colonial Pipeline situation where they were held with ransomware and we had a fuel shortage here on the East Coast. We looked at that situation and we decided maybe it was time for us to start planning some type of fuel storage of our own. So this $100,000 is part of that conversation for us to investigate and hopefully be able to install our own fuel tank. So if we were put in another situation, at least from a county operational standpoint, we wouldn't be as hamstrung to outside fuel needs. Our second item here is an upgrade to our pass system. But this may be an upgrade or maybe a replacement, but this is a 2009 system. We feel that it's time for us to take a look at it. We'd like to be able to add some more online capabilities for our folks as they come in and do permits to make the process smoother and easier. Before I move on, any questions? All right, on the human services side, this is kind of a step 2 of our medical records area renovations. As you know, we went to our Epic system, which freed up quite a amount of space at the public health department because we don't need to store as much in terms of paper records. we've added some money in this year to do some upgrades, and this is a second part that would allow us to take our existing space and to add some more offices. So that's what this 175,000 is for. And then the second project, this is one we've talked about quite a bit, but this is an expansion of the Human Services Center, primarily on the DSS side. We've actually pushed this project out and we've upped the amount. This had typically been a $6 million project. We decided to push it out and to increase it. I think you all are all aware of our increase in construction costs and our difficulties with labor. So we felt that it was probably appropriate to look at this number. And we also felt that with Jan Elliott retiring, that maybe this was a project that we should push out a year as we look to find a new director, and then allow that director to have some input and say on what this expansion project is going to look like. So I don't want you all to think that we're not looking to do this project. We decided it was more prudent to plan it with the director in place and be part of next year's CIP process. Any questions? Mr. Perkins Williams?
Yes, Mr. Barnett. A comment that I hear a lot is that social services is in two buildings. We have two social services. But, you know, the administration part is basically where you are in 1717, and the public uses basically the operations over at the governmental center. Is there any provisions for future of bringing it together? Or bringing it, where is the administration of building a building? Because the respiration in that 1717, not respiration, yeah, where you're breathing, it's not appropriate for today's time. Where is that in this budget? Or have we passed it?
So the hopefully being able to convert DSS into one facility north of the river is part of this project that you see on the CIP. And again, we felt that without a director, it just made more sense to wait to bring the new person in and to get their input to make sure as we're planning and looking at that particular part of the project that we get all of that covered. Last thing I would like to do is to start this process and then we bring somebody in and based on their experience, they've had different history with facility expansions. So that's kind of where we are with that. I think there's opportunity there for it. It's just that we felt that it was more important to have that director involved.
And Brian, we do not have a new county office building in the CIP this year, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, moving to cultural and recreation. We only have one project on this list, and that is our gymnasium at the Alice King Park. This is a project that you all have seen before. Right now, it shows no money in the project for the upcoming fiscal year of 2023. But as part of this fiscal year, we've started the planning process to put all the design and engineering together on this building. As part of our plan last year in the CIP, this was supposed to be a gap year. I've been talking with James Rhodes and Alice King. I think financially there may be an opportunity to move this up. But as part of the CIP right now, we're still going to show the gap year. That may change by the time we get to May. I'd also tell you just to be aware that these are the same figures that we've used through the whole process. So I won't be surprised at all as our county engineer, Tim Corley, goes through his work that this number or these sets of numbers may change. So just want you to be aware of that as we get to May, so there's no sticker shock. But I do think this will come up again for maybe to close that gap year. Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Thank you. Because we are getting a new facility at the Alice King Park and the where does this fit in? I know that the community has contributed to it, and which is a great idea, and that but there is a facility going up at the Alice King Park. And just for clarity, could you please, do you know use and that sort of thing as to where it fit in, just so that the public would know?
So are you talking about the existing construction going on right now?
Yeah,
So that is part of the Council on Aging, their
Yeah.
expansion. We did contribute some additional funding to their capital needs, but the vast majority of the money for that expansion project, they did raise on their own. So that is separate from what you have here in your CIP. That's an expansion of their current facilities. This would be a gymnasium on the same site. So they're on the same district park, but they are two different projects.
I just wanted clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on cultural and rec? Okay, next we move into environmental protection. Historically, this has been mainly just solid waste, but this year, we're having some conversations. We've added a new item to the group, and this is our soil and water. This is our critical waterway snagging. As you all know, our soil and water folks have been really great at getting grant funding, and we've been able to do quite a bit of work in clearing some of our creeks after some of our hurricanes. We decided to look at putting some money aside to combine with any grant funding that may be out there. At least this way, we keep the process going, and we will continue to look for grant funding, but we decided that 100,000 would get a certain amount of miles per year on the creek, and we felt like it was important just to keep that rolling. As we know, weather conditions are always going to add something back to the creek, so we decided if we didn't have to wait on grants, we won't, but if they're out there, we will continue to seek those opportunities. On the solid waste side, this is a continuing project that we do every year. We have set money aside to repair. As you all know, we get a lot of traffic at the transfer station and our convenience sites. So every year we're trying to hit those sites that have the most damage and to keep those as smooth and flowing as possible. So we have 300,000 set aside for those for the convenience sites and the transfer station. We've also put some money for some more storage of fuel at the transfer site. This way we have a backup redundancy. If we were to put in a situation, we're trying to make sure we are as fully covered as possible if we do get into another fuel situation. And then finally, on this particular page, we have one of our rubber tire loaders. This is one of our, all of our trucks are used, but this is one where we always try to make sure that we're recycling out our older ones for our newer models. So we have 285 for a new rubber tire loader. And then finally, on environment protection, we have some more vehicles and our roll-off truck, our tractor trailer replacement, and our yard jockey, all for next fiscal year, are all replacing older models with newer models. The roll-off trucks are probably the most used. They're the ones that go out to the sites and to move the large dumpsters. We do have a tractor trailer. This is time for it to be looked at. And then our yard jockeys are the ones that are used at the actual transfer station. So they get quite a bit of usage as well. So money-wise, we wanted to show a list of how we're going to pay for all these projects. We do have a certain amount of unrestricted current revenues. As I just mentioned, grants, always a great source. Donations, fund balance. This was the first year that we really, this fiscal year was the first year we really looked at fund balance as an opportunity to knock off a lot of our projects on our CIP without any additional burden to our finances. We also have other capital reserves available if needed. And then really, if you look at all three combined, we have traditional loans, we have our LOBs, and then we have our GO bonds, but there's always an opportunity to go out there if the market is just right, interest rates are just right, to look at borrowing money to knock out some of our larger projects. So before I go to the next, I'll stop one more time. I see Commissioner Perkins Williams has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was a little slow with the environmental. Yeah, I always bring up something during a regular meeting about trash, and we have one. The trash is a real problem, and if we're going to attract new businesses. And with the closing of the other one, we need to put our best foot forward as far as trash is concerned. And somewhere or another, I don't have a solution. I know I pick up trash, but I like to somewhere it get addressed throughout, because I've been in other areas and I've seen some, but I always think that mine is the worst, I guess, because I'm driving around over here in this district more than I am others. But trash along the highway, unsightly trash, is a problem when our development person go out to try to attract businesses. No one wants to build a business or add a business to a trash dump. So is there some place where we can address that in this budget? And now that environmental is a good place, I appreciate seeing this. That was my question. Let me see, did I take my hand down? Yeah, I did.
So I think from a capital needs situation, it may be something more appropriate for our operational budget. And solid waste is under Tim Corley, and Tim's here. So I think as we put together our budget that will be submitted the 1st of March, we'll ask that solid waste look at that from a financial standpoint. You know, they have the deputy who is very helpful, and maybe there's some additional programming that we may be able to consider as part of funding next year. So we'll make sure to review that as we do the budget this spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like you and I are just having a conversation. So I love the questions. Better to get them answered. On our school, this part of the presentation, what we really like to do is just give you guys a high level look at the totals. Our Pitt County school folks will be here to give a more in-depth conversation. So I would really ask if you had any specific questions about any of the specific projects. And again, I know this is small font, but you do have it in your binder, and they will go into more detail, that you hold those questions for Dr. Linker and his folks when they present later on this morning. But I still wanted you to see, if you look at the numbers across the bottom, building stuff, I know it's a very vague term to say, but when you get into school stuff, it does get to be quite expensive. And as our county continues to grow and demographics shift around, those costs are not going to go away. I will just remind everybody that House Bill 90, but our classroom size requirements, is still out there. Dr. Linker may hit on that some more. We've been getting waivers, but eventually we're going to have to address that situation at some point in the future. Our community college needs, again, Dr. Rouse and his folks will be here this morning to present this in more detail. Their list does look a little bit easier to accomplish than the Pitt County Schools list, but they do have some future projects that they will probably discuss in more detail, as you know. So if you have any questions, again, I would ask, if it's a specific question, that you ask and wait for Dr. Rouse and the Pitt Community College folks. Again, on the money side, this list looks a lot like our traditional CIP list of how we fund the projects. The only thing I'd really want to point out, on the education side, we do have some restricted revenues that we are able to tap into. Our Article 40 and 42 on our traditional sales tax, and then you all a couple of years ago did approve the Article 46 quarter-cent sales tax. So those are two areas of funding that we do utilize today. I will be happy to report that those sales tax numbers are growing well beyond what we budget. So there is some opportunities for us to tap into those. We still have fund balances that we can look at. We have our reserves. We have been using the reserves on the Article 40 and 42 here in the last 2 fiscal years to help move along some of our non-traditional brick and mortar style capital needs for Pitt County schools. And then also, if we have the debt vehicles that we need, we just went out for the 2021 LOBs. So those are still mechanisms for funding if we so choose. So one of the things a little different this year that I wanted you all to consider, and as we move forward through our budgeting process, with our American Rescue Plan funding, there are some opportunities there for some projects that traditionally are going to be capital in nature. So we felt like because we have not assigned funding yet, since they are capital in nature, that we should at least touch upon that as part of our capital improvement program. We do recognize that you do have your ARP workshop February 21st. So if you have questions today, that's great, but we also felt that probably would be more appropriate to have further conversations when we get to the workshop. But from a CIP standpoint, you know, we really wanted to make sure that you were at least aware of some projects that were put together by our departments. So what you have here on your list, I'm going to start right at the top with the courtroom. It's under general government, but as we move pieces in and out of the courtroom, there are some areas within the ARP funding that will help us address any type of court backlog. Maybe some capital needs there that we're looking at. Right now, I think Tim is meeting with the courthouse folks and our architect to determine what that dollar amount will look like. The beauty with ARP funding is that we don't have to have that number squared away this May. We have until 2024, but we do think it's going to be over that $100,000 mark. So it will be a capital item. Our people in emergency management have identified several capital needs from terms of technology and upgrades to our stretcher equipment. All of which is ARP eligible. Pretty much anything on the medical side is going to be ARP eligible. This will really, really make our inventory more robust and more up to date if we're able to look at this $1 million package on the equipment and the stretcher side. From an engineering on our plumbing side, anything that we can do to make our facilities less, right now everything we have in plumbing is touch. Now, if there's anything that we can do from motion to help stop any type of spread of disease, whether it's COVID or anything else, there's an item that we've looked at. So we have set that $250,000 to do any type of fixture upgrades in our bathrooms, our kitchen areas, throughout our facilities. On the HVAC side, we have the 750. This is to help with filtration of the air. There's a lot of technology out there that will allow us to make the air that you breathe a little more cleaner. So there's an opportunity there to help not only fight viruses, but to help folks' lungs. Obviously, I think that the science will show that the stronger lungs, the more resilient you are to fighting off things like COVID. From a storage standpoint, we are trying to take advantage of any type of bulk storage that we can get, whether it be PPE, sanitizers, anything. So if we're able to utilize on those prices, we'd like to be able to store that equipment in a nice safe spot. This would be something that could be utilized by multiple departments to store some of our COVID needs in terms of supplies and equipment. At the health department, it would be nice to have some canopies for any type of drive-through operations, whether it's testing, vaccines, or we don't know what's coming after COVID. So anything that will help to keep our folks out of the weather and protected, we have set aside some money. And then also, finally, with public health, there may be an opportunity for us to look at the facilities to make sure we're utilizing the space in the best manner. Is there a way to move folks around, or do we need to do some additional work there at public health to not only fight this pandemic, but also the next one? You'll notice there's an asterisk because we do have the money until 2024 that we have to allocate. So this is really our first capital look. There could be future capital looks, obviously, as we get into the workshop. You all may have some ideas. We've also gotten a lot of input from the public, and some of that may also hit that capital threshold. So this list will probably grow. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. Commissioner Perkins-Williams?
I thought I had my last question done, but when you look at the outer edge of the county, I think about the very outer edge of the capital Pitt County. The one thing that was very beneficial when they did that test site at the Beaufort County line, that strolling sign, I don't know what you call those, where it tell people what's going on and where they can go for assistance. Is that built into this little part right here, this last item on the line? Because I don't think COVID is going away that easy.
So I would tell you that it's probably built more into that asterisk there with the note that more projects may be coming. And that could be something that we discuss more in detail at the workshop on the 21st.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's going to meet the capital threshold of 100,000. So I would tell you that's probably something that we should look at. Wanted to just make sure you guys were aware with our CIP and with our American Rescue Plan that we are going to have those items that overlap. You know, I do think as part of my duties as always is to look for funding for any of our projects. I think we have an opportunity here not only to meet some community needs, but also some county needs. And I think those county needs are going to overlap with the community as well. So just wanted you all to be aware of that as we move forward. I think we can really knock out two birds with one stone if we really take and maximize our ARP funding to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the community from what we heard on our input sessions, and that we are looking at some of these capital needs that have been on our CIP for quite a while now. I think we can make some huge dents into both areas. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And this probably will be a big part of our discussion when we get to the workshop on the 21st of February. Of course, it wouldn't be a list if there were some projects that we did not recommend to staff. The first one that we did have submitted was a project of looking at the Register of Deeds and Tax Office. This has been traditionally on our CIP. We feel as staff, we may have accomplished a good bit of this discussion with the purchase of the Ag Carolina building, moving the Register of Deeds out of the courthouse into that facility this fiscal year as we finalize that project. So in theory, this was recommended by the Register of Deeds and the Tax Office. As we moved through the CIP process, we had an opportunity. This goes back to what Janice mentioned on our fund balance. This is why it's important to have a strong fund balance so that when you do have an opportunity, we purchased that building a whole lot less than the number that you see here. So I could technically say we saved money. But in essence, we did not recommend this project since we have found other means of funding it. And then the other project that we did not recommend as part of the discussion again is the expansion of the Human Services Center. I would say we're not recommending the project by the strict definition, but I would tell you that looking at any type of renovations will be part of the overall project once we get a new director in place. So technically, again, it's not recommended, but technically it's still part of the process that we're reviewing. So those are the two areas that we're not recommending. I know that was a long list, and only two not to recommend seems like it's short, but we had some really good projects. Financially, we're in a pretty good shape to even consider these projects. If I didn't think that was the case, I would have asked them to be removed. So before I move on to Pitt County Schools, I'm going to give Mr. Perkins-Williams one more chance to ask a question and to see if there's anybody else that has a question before I bring up Dr. Linker for his presentation. And you may have to excuse us for a minute just to get our slides changed out. Shouldn't be, but we should only be paused for a brief second. So, with no question, we will set up Pitt County Schools. Just the fourth one. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, maybe turn it over to Dr. Linker.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again. I also have with me, you can't see them, but the senior leadership team. I got Deborah Baggett for our finance department and Matt Johnson and Aaron Erickson from our facilities department. Numerous board members watching, appreciate their support as always. Just go through this presentation, very similar to what you've seen numerous times in the past. Just a quick, we'll start with just some projects that are ongoing now that started over the last year or two. The first is, which is school bus cameras and just the overall camera system upgrade. Those are numbers that are about $3 million worth, 2.8 million that are being done with Article 40 and 42 half-cent sales tax. The school bus cameras are in the process of will be bidded out over the next month or two with the new operations management system. Hopefully all the yellow buses should be done by the end of this calendar year. Activity buses will follow after that. In the school buildings themselves, we're working on those as well. The old cameras are now being updated to the VoIP cameras, replacing analog with the digital cameras. That's happening as we speak as well. But hopefully that'll be done by the end of this school year, I believe. Is that correct, Aaron? Thank you. Next, just a couple more projects. The Aiden Middle School paving is being done. That's about $275,000, but that's going to be done this summer. We've already replaced the front end of the school. If you're down that way, the front end entrance. Now we'll replace the bus access loop as well. And that's also being done with Article 40 and 42, as well as we're continuing our fire alarm system upgrades. You can see we've got 3 more schools being done, about $350,000 worth, on top of, I think, 9 schools we finished over the last 2 years, a little over $1 million worth of fire alarm system upgrades now in about a 3-year period. A.G. Cox Middle School, we're a lot of process there going on. We've been working on that now for several years. That process is right in the middle of it. If you drive by, you'll see a 2-story building being built right now on the back side of the school. That hopefully will be done in the next 2 or 3 months. We'll move kids over and then do some renovations on other parts of the building and then fall back in place there. But you can see the timeline there is to be done by next summer. So that's but again, the 2-story wings hopefully will be done in the near future, so we can then move the kids over, then renovate the old building, the old 8th grade wing, and then be able to move the 6th graders out of the front office and build a new front end of the building. Might take questions or keep going? You think?
You can keep going and
Okay.
we'll keep a look for hands up and stop
Okay.
you if we see any.
Thank you, ma'am. Here's just a diagram of the building itself. You can see at the bottom right-hand side, you see in blue, you see that's the 2-story building that's being built now. On the top right-hand side, you see in green, that site will be renovated. If you look on the far left, you'll see in blue, that'll be the new office area, which is actually a current media center. Then the front part of the building will not be there. So that'll be a parking lot and other bus loops and queuing lanes and things of that nature. So that's the renovation project. I believe you probably have seen this before, but just keeping you updated on where we are. The project that just never seems to end has been CMEPS over the last couple of years. Every time we turn around, except now, we're not seeing any problems, but every time we've turned around, we've had issues develop there. But we've got that where it needs to be. You remember a little over a year ago, the roof blew off. Actually been about 18 months now. Had a lot of issues there. We've been through that process. We've now got the roof fixed. That part of the building has been completely fixed. Underneath the building as well. We're now working underneath the building in the cafeteria, actually the kitchen area and the locker room area of the gym. So and that's process. We really just bid it out probably in the last 2 months. And the team is actually in there working now, just got updated this morning. So that process is moving along nicely. You will see timeline there is, although this will be done in phases, we do hope to get the gym and the cafeteria back sooner than what you see on here of April 2023. Hopefully we get that this summer, and then next year we'll be back in those parts of the building. This project was, I think we came to the county commissioners back in probably in the summer sometime and asked for funding support on that one. You can see this project took on a life of its own, so to speak. If you remember, the county commissioners funded an extra 30% of a little over $3 million, right at $3 million out of Article 40 and 42. We did use ESSER funds to help with windows and HVAC and areas of that, to help fund that, about $4 million worth. Plus, we used our fund balance for another $3 million. It's really anywhere from a $10 to $11 million project to get that done, but blended all sorts of funding to make that happen. Since we did mention ESSER funds, I want to talk briefly, if I can, about that, although it's not really it's not a project or anything, but I know just to make sure where everyone understands what ESSER funds are, and for us, we call them ESSER funds, elementary, secondary schools, emergency relief funds. I think in your community, your world, you probably call it ARP, but for us, it's called ESSER funds, same principle. Just quickly, want to just touch base on what that is. We've got funding through three different line items of ESSER funds. Some of those monies have to be spent by this September coming up. Then another group of that money is spent by the following September. Then another group the following September after that, September 2024. So another 3 years or 2.5 years to go on that. So that's probably pushing right at a little over $100 million over 3 years, that kind of money, which is obviously a lot of money. But obviously when it's coming from places, when the federal government's giving it out, there's a lot of strings on what it can and can't be used for. So I was going to give you a quick, we can't just go build buildings with it, is what I'm saying. But we're trying to figure out ways to use local dollars or backfill local dollars if we can. Okay. But generally some of the things so we can save local dollars, but some of the things we're putting on, just so you know, out of the $100 million out of the ESSER funds, 20% of ESSER 3, 20% goes to learning loss, which is summer school and after school activities and things like that. So you're talking, upwards of $15 to $20 million is already off the top. That's just one example. Another example is right now the state budget is giving bonuses to all of our employees, which is wonderful. However, they didn't fund it completely. So we're even having to use our ESSER funds to backfill the state budget that we were told we had to do. A couple other things. We've got, right now, we have over $7 million in HVAC. That'll end up being a little bit more than that because we pulled some out to fund CMFs. That'll be up to $10 million. Hundreds of thousands of dollars on music equipment, $2 million on media center books, $2.8 million on student devices, which will actually probably come out to be closer to double that, 5.6 by the time we get to year 3. We put in audio and video enhancements in the classrooms, another line item, something that not what I showed you earlier, that's $2 million. Replacing flooring in the schools, $1.5 million. Playground equipment. We can go around to all of our schools, and some schools that don't have enough playgrounds or we need to simply replace everything, we can add in, we've budgeted about $100,000 for 15 schools so we can do some work there. So these are things that normally, plus there's lots of other stuff. Marquee signs, we're looking at new marquees at our high schools. Plus some of our other schools don't have a sign out front. So this is just a way that we're allowed to use some of this money to do some of that kind of work. So there's just an example of things we're doing in their schools. Plus we have probably inside, the board has created bonuses. We've had, like a lot of school districts and governments have employee bonuses. We've spent up so far $9 million. That number I'm sure will go up to probably 14 million by this fall or Christmas out of this money. So $100 million is a lot, but you take 20 million for this and 15 here and everything else, it does get spent. And everything we spend on has to be approved by DPI before we can spend it. We also have, I think, $18 million over 3 years in personnel on people inside. That's running our virtual school, extra teachers when we can find them, and extra employees when we can find them. But we have over, and again, that's over 3 years. But that's kind of where how that money is being used at this point. The capital improvement plans to just keep going.
You got.
Got questions?
You have two questions. Mr. Floyd Hawkins, Ms. Nunley had his hand up.
Okay. Ms. Floyd Huggins? I don't,
Good morning, Dr. Langton. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, ma'am.
Good, thank you. I want to go back to the school bus cameras.
Yes, ma'am.
I had my hand up, but I didn't get the answer. I'll ask you at that time. These cameras are for the inside of the buses, correct?
Yes, ma'am, correct. These are not
You're
stop arm cameras.
you're capturing the activities inside the buses as they travel and pick up. What about outside of the buses, on the school bus, on the arms of the
Yes.
buses?
On the stop arms, we have had that conversation.
Yes, we have.
We're really still just waiting to see where those lawsuits end up on the traditional red light cameras to see where we go. At this point, I'm not aware of any district in the state of North Carolina that's actually added those cameras to the stop arms. In fact, most of them are waiting on to see how that lawsuit here in Pitt County, how that moves forward to see what they can do. That's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Let's talk about the after school programs. Do you have plans to, excuse me, to put those after school programs in schools or out in the community with some churches or nonprofit organization? How do you plan to roll that out?
Generally, we're doing them in schools right now and partnering either with United Way or other organizations, or even partnering with churches. We have some churches we're partnered with that are working within our schools. But we have those in almost all of our schools right now, after school programs. Of course, these are things that, this is all part of the whole learning loss. You can debate whether that's the proper word or not, but really just working on our curriculum to get kids all caught back up where we need them to be for the next 2 or 3 years.
So there's you have some now, but there's room to expand on this?
Possibly, yes. Is there something specific we can look at? But we have partnered with United Way. We've also partnered with some organizations that have gotten the 21st century grants or other after-school programs, and also a couple of churches in the community.
What about lunches, breakfast, and that program?
Those programs are still free to all students. I just saw that program will continue to the end of this year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nunley, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it was, I'm all covered. Thank you.
Just continue on then with funding sources. We talked about ESSER funds. Again, if I need to go in more detail, please let me know and I can share more information with you if you need more information on the ESSER funds. Plus the other things are just the funding sources, how we kind of pay for our buildings, the capital improvement plan, which is what we're talking about here, is really bigger type things. And you'll see some schools listed there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We've done a lot of LOBs, the limited obligation bonds, with the county over the last, at least in my 8 years here. They also have the GO bonds, which we haven't done. I know the state was looking at a state bond. That's not come to fruition for schools. There is some information in the current budget that we're just now getting about some opportunities for us to maybe get some money from the state for some school construction. I mean, literally that information came out Thursday of last week, so we're trying to follow up on that. And there is some money there for some repairs that we haven't even got the information on that yet. So a couple $100,000 this year and maybe 500,000 next year. We're trying to get the details on that. But as far as school construction, and you'll see, you've seen that list before, as far as buildings that are old that need some renovations and things like that. But we'll get some more information and share that with you as far as what we're allowed to use. There's $350 million, I think, in the state budget, but right now, we got to figure out who can apply for it. And as normal tier 1 counties get first crack at that money. So we'll see where we are and what we can apply for. And there is a match 15% match for it. So if you ask for, $10 million, you got to come up with 1.5 million. So, which is, for us, that's a bonus. It's a good deal. Here's our proposal for next year. For 22-23 capital funds. I'm going to look just the total request for capital funds is 2.1 million. And you can see the increases there and where they are. It's an increase. I mean, the numbers don't add up to 2.1 million because that's showing you the changes. Okay. But like painting has gone up. We're talking about additional, can keep going with additional fire alarm replacements out of the half-cent sales tax, the 4042. We still have, even though we're putting money into redo playgrounds, we still have playgrounds that we then need to keep updated. We have to either, fix nuts and bolts and fix slides and fix swings and things like that. So that money there is for that. Plus the idea of furniture requests, maintenance, roofing funds. Last year, I think we asked for about 4.6 million in roofs. We funded that through Article 40 and 42, I believe. And then, or lobs, which one? I don't remember, Brian, which one it was.
It was the excess Article 40 and 42.
Okay, so is that a 40 and 42? This year, we're decreasing that number to $600,000. And, custodial line equipments and things like that, plus some outdoor athletic areas we need to look at. Here is the chart that I think you've seen before. It kind of broke just where we've taken last year and now the request for this year. You kind of see the changes there. You can see the painting, security cameras, things that have changed. Category 1's gone up $100,000. Equipment has actually, or furniture has actually gone down. Category 3, maintenance of vehicles and transportation has gone up just a little bit. That's just the actual cost of vehicles. And then half-cent sales tax, you can see requesting 600,000 for the roofs of our buildings. Where last year, I think that number was, as I said, 4.8 million. Just for your information, we've already done about $2.2 million worth, or at least it's been awarded. The bids have been awarded. We're in the process of finishing those bids now. They'll be doing this summer. They'll be working on this summer, finishing up those $2+ million worth of additional roofing. You can see the rest of the list there are tennis courts, bleacher repairs, science labs, outdoor athletic facilities. Mentioned that a little minute ago. Elevators, chair lifts, custodial equipment, and maintenance gives us to the $2.1 million that we're actually requesting this year. Then this chart here you've seen this chart. Just try to lay it out to where it's on. I think it's in about one page. Just the year of our buildings, the years some of these buildings are built, and where we are with having to renovate them, just to keep the commissioners aware of what's going on. I think we shared that number a couple of years ago. It's probably 200, and I think I saw $250 million, sorry, to do all of this work. Obviously, we're not requesting all of this work, but these are just things that are going to need to be done sometime in the near future as we're moving forward. We do have it in our 10-year plan that has been shared with the commissioners. And here's just a proposal of projects for this year. Again, this information has been shared with my Board of Education. Nothing's been formally approved by the Board of Education. These are just projects that we know we're going to have to attack, and this is kind of a recommended order that we would propose to them. Nothing's been approved yet. And the first couple items there are all because of House Bill 90, the class size. If you remember, I've shared, we actually have a waiver at this point from that. That waiver is not going to last forever, but we currently have a waiver. So there's a couple options there that need to be looked at, pushing 14 or 15 million there. Plus DH Conley, as you know, we're seeing lots of growth in that area. DH Conley also has a mobile unit outside with about 10 classrooms in it. So the option there would be and the media center was built in about 70, and it's designed for a school about half its size. So the media center does need to be expanded, which would actually be built in a new wing when we get to that stage. Couple of generators there just because of storms. These two generators are at Jared Whitfield and Grifton. just to keep the school running, because those are the schools we seem to have the most trouble with electricity. Thank you. What kind of questions can I answer?
Don't see any hands up. I want to thank you very much for your presentation. I want to especially thank you for that extra slide on funding this year. I think for us, for me as a manager and our team and the commissioners, there's a perception that there's a lot of money that's available.
Sure.
And it's just important to reinforce that all of that money has separate limitations and conditions attached to its expenditure. So one part of the project is identifying the appropriate projects, and we appreciate and we defer to you in telling us where that priority lies in terms of what needs to happen. And then I think our key to success will be this open communication about each of us knowing everyone's sources of funding as an open book and with transparency, so that we can then best determine how that's funded. And to realize that even though there's large sources of funds coming to the Board of Education, there's still very legitimate capital needs coming our way. So we
Correct.
appreciate that.
Is there a Ms. Perkins?
Ms. Perkins Williams.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, will we get these slides or are they in my book? I kept looking and I didn't see them. But will we get these slides from Dr. Linker?
Yes, they are in your book and we will email them out to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready to transition to Pitt Community College.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, I think we may have some folks here from the community college and we are ahead of schedule. So we can, Brian, do you want to proceed ahead until the rest of the community college team comes? Or, okay. Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with you, we're ahead of schedule. We'll wait for Dr. Rouse to get here, and we have some other pieces of our presentation that Brian can go through while we're waiting for him to get here.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Brian.
So one thing we wanted to do this CIP differently than the past years is that we wanted to give you an update on some projects that have been approved in prior years, just to give you a heads up of where we are. So what I'm going to cover is these 4 projects. They're 4 big dollar items. The animal shelter renovation project, detention center generators, the human services center expansion project, and then the sheriff's administrative building project. So with the animal shelter, you all know we went through some hiccups on that particular project. And now we're at a place where we did bring in a new construction company. The back and forth with the old construction company and some increased costs did up the budget slightly, but nothing that we couldn't handle. And I believe we're scheduled for May of this year, 2022, to finish out that project. So right now, everything's running pretty smooth. All things considered, in this strange construction world that we're in right now, this project is rolling along. Detention center generators, I know this is something we've talked about for years. About 2 years ago, we actually went out for a grant through the state of North Carolina and FEMA to look for some funding on a project. Fortunately, we were awarded the grant. It was actually slightly more than what we asked for. So that's a win-win too. And what makes this grant even more unique is not only is the state helping to pay for it, they're actually administering and running the project. So they're handling all of the cost of purchasing the equipment, and then they will handle the installation of the generators at the detention center. So this is a special win that we want to make sure you all are aware of. On the human services center expansion, I think this is one I've kind of beat up already, but We did increase the budget in the CIP based on construction costs, and we also looking to wait for the new director to come on board before we move this project along. This project had kind of been tied together with the Sheriff's Administrative Building as part of that increased fund balance that we were looking to cash fund. And so with the changes in construction costs and changes in administration and DSS, again, we decided to push this project out. And then the final project we wanted to give you an update on was our Sheriff's Administrative Building. This is a project that we looked at our excess fund balance as we moved into this fiscal year. This is something that we'd always talked about borrowing some money, and we had an opportunity to use some of that excess cash that I felt like would leave us in a good financial place. So we wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on this project. Outside of the animal services project, this is one that we really have been moving along with this fiscal year. And so first thing I wanted just to make sure everybody was aware of, as Commissioner Perkins Williams alluded to, this is a public meeting, so I just want everybody to know that our sheriff's office, as you can see, if you factor out the large red circle there, east of the airport, the remaining circles are all the locations that are housing sheriffs / detention employees and operations. As you can see, obviously the detention center is right there next to where we're proposing the building, but the other facilities are in and around our downtown area. We have some at the courthouse, 1st Street, 3rd Street, 9th Street, and then we have the garage facility out by the transfer station. So we just wanted to make sure everyone knew that even though the sheriff herself is primarily at the courthouse, the operations are spread out across the county. These spaces we are leasing or renting, and we are making the best of the situation that we have with these spaces. So as the sheriff's office has continued to grow, because our population has grown, these facilities haven't. So we are cramming people in wherever we can, closets, hallways, you name it. We're also doing a lot of shared space within these facilities. So it's a classic case of they're making it work, but it's not necessarily the most efficient. And to be quite honest, a county of our size, we don't have a signature sheriff's facility. I'm sure if you go to other counties, you will see that. So in 2022, this is something that we've decided it's very important for us to have and to look at. So this really started before COVID. Prior to COVID, we had selected John Farkas as the architect. And during this fiscal year, starting in October, the sheriff's command staff, our county engineer, myself, the county manager have met every 2 weeks with our architect to make sure that we are considering everything possible that needs to go into this facility, how the building should work, how it should look, how it should be laid out. So it's been a big team effort. We've even met in person with all our COVID protocols to make sure that everybody's on the same page. The architect every 2 weeks gives us homework to go back and do for the next meeting. So in doing that, we've come together and determined that really the best use is going to be roughly a 33,000 square foot facility. It's going to move all of the people at the courthouse, 1st Street, 3rd Street, 9th Street, and then what we call the PATS building here on the main campus, all into one space. This will really help the sheriff's office in their operations and their efficiencies and their abilities to work together being under one roof. That being said, I wouldn't be standing here if there wasn't a cost to it. And when you look at the size of this facility to make it work in a manner that it should, and then you combine that with the ongoing supply chain, construction costs, and labor shortages due to the pandemic, that has caused our number initially around $6 million, which had actually grown a little bit over $7 million to, once you lay everything out, we are looking somewhere between 11 and 13 million. This is quite a big jump. I will point out initially, the project was looking at a 20,000 square foot when we first started this project off. But I would tell you the $6 million number was really more of a placeholder. And we hope when we go out and bid this project and we time it up right, that we're going to be on the lower end of this estimate than the higher end. That being said, we still have to pay for it. I know we had set aside some money in this budget as part of our fund balance. I would really can hope that we can consider not tapping that as a cash funded source and to look at this as one of our more traditional borrowing, looking at some type of bond mechanism to pay for this facility. If we go down that road, I would roll it all together in one financing portfolio with Pitt Community College. They have a large project that they would really like to see get off the ground. And as you just saw from Dr. Linker, they have $275 million worth of projects. So not going to fund all of that, but they do have some upcoming needs. We would roll all this in together as one debt borrowing, another LOBs like we did last spring for the 2021A and 2021B. And then we would also look at the budget. We had set aside cash funding to do this project. Obviously, if we go out and borrow money, that frees up that money. So there's items on this CIP list that we've presented so far that we would probably bring back to your attention to try to knock out or move up the CIP list at the same time with that freed up cash, or you could ultimately just sit on it. I think we're in a place where we're well above your goal of 18 to 20%. Right now, we're sitting on 33, 34%. So I do think from a financial standpoint, there's some safe movement to go ahead and look at some of the capital needs and to maybe go ahead and cash fund the smaller non-brick and mortar needs and go ahead and accomplish those from a CIP standpoint. And then finally, as we talked about earlier through our ARP funding, obviously, if you move a large portion of the sheriff's operations out of the courthouse, that frees up space. So that freed up space is a capital need that we will have to address as we move forward with the courthouse as they expand back into more of their normal flows of operations. So that is space that could be utilized by our existing judges, or it could be utilized by juvenile justice or even our public defender's office. These are all groups that we're on the hook for if they need capital needs. So that space in the courthouse is not going to be freed up, not only from the Register of Deeds folks moving out to the Ag Carolina building, but also as the sheriff's people, staff move out of the courthouse, that frees up space. So I wanted to give you a preliminary look at the building. This is designed by our architect. If we get to a point as moving forward, you want to see a better picture of this, more blown up, obviously we can get you a copy. This is the layout of the new building here. I'm going to jump one slide ahead just so you kind of get a sense where we're talking about north of the river. This is on the corner of New Hope. New Hope is the driveway that takes you to the detention center, and Green Street. And Green Street is the main drag coming out of the city of Greenville. This building would sit on that corner, utilizing the existing driveway and opportunities already there on New Hope. And I'm going to jump back to the actual layout. This would get a large portion of the sheriff's staff into one facility. It's a one-story building, so we were trying to save costs that way, not having a second floor. Once you get into elevators and stuff, you could almost add another $500,000 to $1 million. This would also give them an opportunity as the county continues to grow and the sheriff's office continues to grow. If there's a phase 2 or 3 down the road in the next few years, what we're not bringing over into the sheriff's operations is we're not bringing the forensic lab, which is currently housed in the detention center, and we're not bringing over the vehicle maintenance, which is right now at the transfer station. But this particular site has everything laid out. We're going to set the site up for those future phases if we have an opportunity, if we have another really good fund balance year and we want to bump some of those things up in the future, or if we have an opportunity through grant funding. This particular layout does allow us that opportunity to easily expand upon this existing site. So we wanted to present this to you now just to give you the heads up. Like I said, it's a sticker shock compared to what we were originally looking at. And I think Janice has a comment or two, and then we'll open the floor up if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Brian, for that presentation, and then happy to answer any questions from the board. But at this point, we really do need some direction from the board. In my review of this plan, I believe it's a lean facility. As county manager and as your chief financial officer, we're recommending that we move forward with this project at this higher cost because we believe it's lean and we believe it's necessary for our community. But what I would say is the board at this point has the opportunity to say, proceed forward or stop. This is not what we had in mind. If you say proceed forward, I think we'd like some direction from the board as to financing. We obviously cannot cash fund this entire project at this new price. And so if you want us to explore other funding opportunities, such as a bond or a loan, we can certainly do that. If you tell us to proceed, you're not at the point of no return at this point, because what a vote of proceed would mean would be that we would then move to the next step and bid this project out. If we did that, we'll see what the actual costs are, and then that's when you get to the funding piece. So wanted to lay that out there. I don't see any fluff in this design. I'm pleased with the team effort that we employed to get to this point, and we're open to your feedback.
I'll also point out, if you have a specific sheriff's question, the sheriff is here in the audience. I'd much rather her answer that than I try to. But if you have any money questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer. And I believe Commissioner Nunley has a question.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, I think that this building, as we're managing the various puzzle pieces in our Uptown facilities, trying to get things where they need to be with the courthouse register of deeds, it seems that getting the sheriff relocated is an absolute imperative, not to mention that long term that department needs to be able to operate with an increased level of efficiency that project like this would afford. I would be in support of taking our financial experts' advice on this. I think that we should look at wrapping this up into a big package for funding. If I'm not mistaken, Brian, I think rates are really good right now, and if we've got bigger projects that we can take advantage of that, I think that it would be a prudent move. Of course, I would defer to you on that and take your recommendation, but I would just like us to I'd like us to see move forward with this project and explore the funding avenues as recommended by Brian Barnett. And that's it.
So before I jump to Commissioner Perkins-Williams, I will point out real quick that from an interest earning standpoint, we're in a terrible time, but in an interest rate, if we did have to go out and look at borrowing as we move forward, if you all move forward today to investigate that, then I would tell you that this is probably one of the best times to take a look. I'd also would point out that we would look at all of our different sources of bonds available as we move forward. We have traditionally looked at lobs, but I would tell you that, maybe this is a time to look at everything. There's more steps involved with other avenues of borrowing money, but I would tell you we're not going to turn we're going to turn over every stone to find the best option for the county. So Commissioner Perkins-Williams.
Thank you. I have a question for the sheriff. In some of my committee assignments that I have, I like to ask a question about, since I can't see what's in there, cybersecurity, and is that a part of your area? And is it included in this?
Oh, okay. Commissioner Williams, yes, we do have a unit that deals with cybersecurity in a way. Most of the times that would come into play when we're at our level, when we're talking about people stealing identities. We do have an ICAC unit that deals specifically with cyber issues with predators who try to solicitate children. So we do delve into that type of cyber security, if you will, that would fall under that realm. Mm-hmm. If I'm answering your question, the question that you're asking, I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to do to make it go up, but yes, you are. That's where I am with the question, to make sure that since we are projecting, that is a part of your preview, and if it's built into this, and technology public safety has a lot to do with with technology right now. So is that included in here? Even I see the light line, meaning that the growth, but I'm wondering, are the consideration here for this initial building so that the best technology can be there?
Yes, ma'am. I think that this building, the way that it's going to be constructed is going to be able to facilitate all of the needs that we have at this point. Certainly our crimes grow, as the community grows, crime grows, and we always try to stay one step ahead, but this facility would move us in the right direction. And being able to put all of our resources into one area so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And not having to push information that gets lost in transition as it goes from building to building. But this would be a perfect opportunity for the county to have a wonderful facility that would be able to provide accommodations for almost the entire sheriff's office. And we are very appreciative and looking forward to this initiative.
I agree with what Nunnally was saying, but in some of those national committees that I sit on, this area has been a top concern for a lot of states and counties. And during emergency, there was a big discussion and a couple of them relating to communications with public safety and the emergencies. When we're looking at buildings such as this, Mrs. Manager, I like for you to stay tuned into that area, because hearing the others states and counties discussing this, and we are nowhere near that. And we are building what looks to be a fine building, because it looks like dots to me. But please pay attention to these things, because it has a lot to do with public safety during emergencies, disasters, and overrun of mass situations. That's what because technology and all of that and everything comes in together. So I just wanted the officials of the county to know that this is a massive undertaking. We're heading to the future, and we're catching up in some instances, but please keep that in mind. Those little things like technology and other communication systems are not always thought of here. So I'd like very much for you to keep that in mind. It's a serious matter other places. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perkins-Williams. We will absolutely keep those things in mind. And I think you'll see some of those concerns addressed in the capital improvement plan that we talked about earlier, with some of those radio and technology improvements. And if you couple that with an appropriate and efficient facility, I think we will be best serving our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheriff.
Commissioner Floyd Hogan?
Yes, Brian, I know we've talked about all of the big ticket items that we have. And as Commissioner Nunley said, I'm in favor of moving forward with the Sheriff's Administration building, and we already decided on what we're going to do with the registered deeds and the tax office. And you mentioned the school, some of the projects that Dr. Lincoln talked about, that all of this would come under, as you said, how we would go about paying for this. Madam Manager mentioned earlier that a new county office building is not included here. Are we spending money to make improvements to the county office building? We continue to spend money on that and where is that? Yeah, I forgot now what we decided. We put that on hold and just where is that? Okay, that's what I'm asking. As we talk about all of these buildings and big ticket items.
So in the county office building, we will continue to make any of the maintenance upgrades or fixes that we need to. In terms of an overall capital project, that number, I wouldn't even dare guess what that number or estimate what that number would be if we were looking at it from a larger scale issue. And to be honest, in lieu of some of our other projects, I think it's probably a good number that we need to investigate, but I'm not sure from a priority standpoint where it would fit when you look at some of our other needs. And if we are able to move some people out of this building, that may change what the future of this building looks like as we move into the human services expansion and we look at some other departments. So I think it's probably something that we probably do need to put our heads together so that we always have a number available for you all to look at. But I just think from a priority standpoint and a cost standpoint, it would be very hard to consider that compared to some of our other needs.
I understand the priorities and all that, but I just want us to be aware of the money that we continue to make repairs to this building and all. So.
And if I could add to that as well, Commissioner Floyd Huggins, just to piggyback on what Brian has said, hearing that concern, if there's no objection from the board, we can certainly look at, when we bring back the budget in May, potentially including some planning funds or some further evaluation funds so that we have better data and evidence on what it's costing us to maintain this building, what it would cost to plan and study for a new building, and then what that building would cost to maintain. So I think that's an excellent point that you make, and can continue to work with the team to see if we're at the stage to include some degree of planning funds.
And I'll also point out, Tim Corley just pointed out, as I'm already in next year mode, we do have money in this current budget that you all approved to look at and study this building in more detail, to look at those future needs. So we are in the process of working on that according to Tim. So that should also help answer some of your questions.
All right, thank you.
But do we have any other questions on the sheriff's administrative building?
I don't know. I've had my hand up, I thought, but I think that this is an opportunity, listening to what Chris said. I think he feels the same. Anyway, I feel like we ought to purchase this building, period. It gives us a footprint downtown that the county has not had in forever. And I think pulling in some of our other departments and areas eventually, after we get the building to where it should be, that we would have most of our county people located here along with the sheriff. So I don't know whether that motion is in order. I don't know if that's where we're headed. I hate to just keep putting it off for fear that somebody else may pick this building up, because eventually, are we moving here? Is this what we want to do?
So I think, Commissioner Ward, just to clarify things, we've already moved forward on the Ag Carolina building for the Register of Deeds. So that's been done already. What we might need some further direction or your vote on potentially is whether to move forward with new construction of the Sheriff's Administration building at what's now a higher price tag than initially anticipated. And whether or not, if we move forward with that, the board is agreeable to financing that along with other projects that are necessary, bundled together. And I think Commissioner Nunley has his hand up and might be willing to make such a motion.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Mr. Chair, yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the stated plan for the Sheriff's Administration building, and hopefully have a second.
I second it.
Okay, the motion's been moved properly second. Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Geo bond only.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes, but Coulson just made, was that Nunley's motion?
He didn't make a preference. I did.
How does that affect the motion?
Because I want the voters to have to vote on something that large. I don't
No, I
want us
mean-
to just do an LOB.
I'm fine with what you suggesting, but I'm talking about the original motion.
So let me clarify my motion. My motion was simply to move forward with the plan, not to tie down the financing options. It was my understanding that Assistant Manager Barnett would be coming back and exploring all funding revenues. And as a part of my motion, if it's necessary, I'll modify and state that to have staff report back to our board about the appropriate funding vehicles.
Okay. I would vote yes for that.
That was my understanding of the motion based on.
Then I'll say yes to that as well.
Commissioner McGawhorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Are we ready with Pitt Community College yet, or are we still waiting on folks to show up?
We are, everybody's here for Pitt Community College, so we'll have the PIO folks help us switch the presentation. And actually, once the community college is done, that'll be our last bit. So at that point, then we'll have any more questions or direction from you all.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Dr. Rouse, please come forward. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank Chairman Fitzpatrick, members of the Board of Pitt County Commissioners, as well as our county manager. Thank you for allowing Pitt Community College to come before you this morning to talk about our capital improvement projects and requests. So first, before we get into our requests, I just want to talk a little bit about the way that we have distributed our higher education emergency relief funds. A lot of these are known as CARES Act funds. So we did receive a little bit over $36.6 million at Pitt Community College. And the way that we've expended those is emergency financial aid for our students, a little bit over 15.2 million. We also did equipment software to enable us to go into distance learning mode, 1.8 million. We also had technology hardware for our students, over $400,000. And also high-speed internet access for our students, for those who don't have high-speed internet at home. We did have an upgrade to our HVAC system to increase the airflow within our buildings. That's a little over $2 million. We also did campus safeties and operation improvements over that $700,000. So just to talk a little bit about these funds, that we did have certain criteria that we had to meet. We could not use these for any capital improvements other than those that might affect COVID. So we gave, as you can see, the majority of funds to our students and to increase the ability for them to attend Pitt Community College, either remote or either in person. Unfortunately, we were not able to use any of these for buildings or beginning new buildings or anything of that nature. So I just wanted to talk with you about that. So as you can see that we did give the majority of funds to our students to help them to survive this COVID pandemic. So in looking at our capital improvement request summary, we're looking at design fees for a workforce technology building. I think you're all familiar with this. We have presented this several times, and we still have it as our number one priority. Also, we have the interior door lock replacement phase 2. And this is an ongoing project in which we're trying to increase the safety on our campus. We're also looking at the building, the Leslie building roof replacement. At this point, it has been around for a while and needs replacing, $400,000. And then for 24-25, we're looking at exterior door lock replacement phase 1. That is the first phase of this, $270,000. And then for 2025, another $270,000 for exterior door lock replacements. So to talk a little bit about the workforce technology building, it is anticipated to be at about 52,600 square feet. We are requesting today $1.5 million to do the design of this particular building and to have construction ready documents. So as funding becomes available, we'll be ready to start construction. So the purpose of this building is to meet both the short-term and long-term labor demands and strategically build the workforce pipeline. We're looking at a flexible lab and training spaces. In other words, we can adapt that space to whatever industry needs are. We are looking at the biotechnology area as well as cybersecurity. I know that came up just earlier, making sure that cybersecurity and simulation game design are included with this training for that. Advanced manufacturing, technical trades, customized manufacturing project training, which if an industry says, I need my workforce to get additional skills, then we can customize those skills for them and have offer that training at their particular, at this particular location. Also, both curriculum and con ed programming. So it would be for those programs that are credit bearing as well as non-credit bearing. And last but not least, we'll also have the Pitt Community College and Pitt County School collaboration with this as well. So we feel that this building, this facility is key to Pitt County economic development, and it is local and regional workforce development. The majority of jobs will be at certificate and associate degree level, and there's an immediate need. If we look at the projections at this point, we're looking at pharmaceutical services needing about 1,000 employees. If we look at computer technology, it's about 400. And advanced manufacturing is 1,000. So with that, in order to meet this demand, we do need training space in order to continue to grow this pipeline. So again, we want to serve our existing industry and encourage growth and expansion of industries, as well as attract new businesses and industry with workforce development, infrastructure, and our labor pipeline. In other words, to bring new industry here, we need to be able to offer them an area that they can train their employees in, as well as continue to build a pipeline of employees. We also anticipate significant retirement within the workforce, what we call the silver tsunami, which means that a lot of individuals are reaching the age that they're going to retire from the workforce. So we need to have replacements for them. Our current PCC training facilities are all, and I'm glad to say, at maximum capacity when it comes to our technical areas. We are finding that our high schools, as well as others, are finding interest in the technical areas, such as construction trades, welding, and so forth. Also, there is a critical need to train the existing and future workforce. So this building will help us to do that. And also to train the adult learner workforce. And also we want to develop local talent. Also in our request is a replacement for the G.H. Leslie building. This building was built around 1996, and the roof has reached a point where it needs to be replaced within the next 2 to 3 years. The cost is $400,000. We have patched it up several times. Several areas have been patched, and we're just afraid that if we continue, we're going to have a major leak that will certainly impact this structure. We would prefer to have a metal roof, but that is 3 to 4 times as much as we're projecting. So we're just going to go with a replacement. Also on the campus interior door lock replacement, we are in the second phase. It's taken 3 phases, and each phase is $180,000. And this again relates to campus safety. We want to be able to have locks that will be able to be locked from the inside of a classroom in case there is an incident that occurs on campus. So we're talking about 650 doors at PCC that need to have locks replaced or upgraded. Many of our classroom doors, as I just mentioned, can only be locked from the outside. We want to have that capability of locking from the inside. And safety codes, if there is fire or anything on our campus, our doors should be able to open with a single motion to open that door. And so it would be to help us make sure that we meet those safety codes. We certainly would need these locks replaced. And it would also enable our employees to secure the spaces without further endangering students. And then on the campus exterior door lock replacement, again, this will take place within 3 phases, and each phase will be $270,000. And right now, exterior doors can only be locked in person. Currently, there is no methodology for tracking or disabling a person's access to a building without taking an individual's key. So we all have those metal keys that you use to get in and out of the doors. These door locks would be electronic, so we could disable any key that a person has. We could also initiate a lockdown of the campus by using electronic means. So this is a map of the campus and the new workforce development building, if funded, would be built on the corner of Reedy Branch. And we have, of course, open site there to do that. But there's also additional needs that we have on our campus. The second one that we would have would be a welding building sometime in the near future, because our welding building is outdated. And it is one of those areas that we could train students 24/7. We have a lot of students that come in to get training, and they go immediately to work. They go directly to the workforce. So we're looking at that as being a second priority for us at Pitt Community College. And third, we'd like to collaborate with Pitt County School to build a technical academy facility. We've seen that program grow from 80 students to, from 25 students to 80. And we're hoping to get up to about 200 students who are taking technical courses at our institution. However, we don't have the current space to house them. So with that, that's my presentation and my request. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
I don't see any hands up, Dr. Rouse. I want to thank you again for adjusting your schedule as we were ahead of schedule, for your comprehensive report, for your transparency and your other sources of funding, so that we can look to you as we prioritize these projects and determine the most appropriate source of funds for them. So
right.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So Chairman Fitzpatrick, I'll open the floor if there's any questions or anything else that we need to go back and touch on. I would like to take 1 second and thank Denise Urban, Kelly Dixon, and Tim Corley. They do most of the heavy lifting to get us to this point, to put all our data and documents together. So I just wanted to recognize the effort that they put through to get us to today.
Well, we certainly thank everybody's hard work. Does anybody have any questions
Yeah, I had a question. Alex, can you hear me?
Morning.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I'm just wondering if this might be a time that we could get a sort of a survey of our facilities and see what generally our roofs are like. And I'm talking here about buildings that I'm interested in, buildings that are not only being currently used, but buildings that we are responsible for, that are owned by schools or sheriff or county, that are possibly sitting disused and are becoming problems. And I'm talking really as an extension of our discussion of recently of that gym. I'm really not wanting to get caught up in being surprised like I was with the fate of that gym. Is this a time that we could find out what we own that's not being used, that's on county-owned land and might be deteriorating to a point that someday we're going to be faced with a roof or destruction?
Good morning, Commissioner Albright. I'll try to answer that question for you. So we have a very well-defined inventory in our engineering department of all the facilities that are owned by the county. We have obviously several in the downtown area that are occupied by state agencies and other groups. We have overall condition of roofs, air conditioning units, as well as the internal components as far as what large ticket items may come up as a result. Also have the age of all the equipment and roofs. The last time they were installed, we track those, try to plan accordingly, be proactive in what work may need to be done. As far as other work or other buildings that the county may own, I'd have to do a look to see what other type facilities might be included in those. That particularly on the school side, as far as buildings such as the Stokes Gym.
Yeah, that's why all I'm looking for. Yeah, just so we don't get surprised like that again. I'm sure I take it. I'm glad that we're keeping up with all the buildings that are being used, but I think that what I'm really talking about are buildings that we own and are responsible for that have fallen into not being used and they're now deteriorating to a point that they become troublesome to us. And that's what I'm really trying to get at. And I appreciate your keeping up with all the others. And I don't really need that kind of inventory, but I'm just hoping that to hear that we are going to check on this and not get that kind of surprise again.
Great. I see a hand from Commissioner McLawhorn, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Melvin.
And then Ian Huggins.
Commissioner McLawhorn, I think you're mute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. This question is somewhat concerning what Commissioner Albright was alluding to. But I heard Dr. Rouse from Pitt Community College talk about the roofing. And Brian, I wanted you to kind of hear this too, in terms of longevity and the our financial stability. I know metal roofing is it lasts much longer and in terms of stability, but I know it's more costly. But from a long-term perspective and financial stability, would not a metal roofing suffice the needs rather than having to continue to replace regular roofing? I was concerned about that, and that may be an area that we need to explore.
Okay, we'll bring up Pitt Community College and potentially the county engineer to share thoughts on metal roofing versus traditional.
So Commissioner McLawhorn, I think I heard your question. I guess to paraphrase that the metal roofing would last longer than the traditional roof. Is that the gist of your question?
Yes, sir. And hearing you talk about that, certainly I would be in favor of getting a metal roofing as far as longevity is concerned and cost effectiveness. And that was my concern to Brian and our financial team.
Okay. Well, I have Mr. Owens here, who's our VP over our facilities, and maybe he can address the difference between the current style roof that we have, as well as replacing it with a metal roofing.
Thank you.
Morning. So for new construction, we typically do try to go with the metal roofing just because it does have a significantly longer lifespan than asphalt shingle roofs. The original, I call it the original front row on campus, and a couple of buildings actually have the slate roofs, which have a significantly longer lifestyle if they were installed and maintained properly. We do have a few buildings on campus that were built during tighter construction budget times that have asphalt roofs. The building that we were looking at there, the GH Leslie building, is one of them. There was about 400,000 when we got that most recent estimate to replace that roof. That was up from about 200,000 a year or two back. I did not price metal this go round just because the cost of steel has skyrocketed. Last time I looked at it, it was about 1.2 million to go versus 400,000. That is a 20 to 30 year lifespan on the asphalt shingles. It was a judgment call at that point in time. And with all the other projects that we had, we went with we were requesting the asphalt roofing. And this is a revised, you saw our capital improvement list has shrunk quite a bit just because we were able to use that HERF funding to pull probably $1 million, $1.5 million worth of the HVAC repairs that we needed. We were able to pull into that HERF funding. We're in the process of updating that master plan. So it really is just a balancing act for us when it comes in. If funding were available, yeah, I would love to have the standing seam metal roofs run across all of campus just because they wear better, they withstand hurricanes better, everything like that. But it's just a matter of budget balance there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner McLaughlin. And we will also take those thoughts into consideration as we look at all of our other county buildings as well when it comes time for replacement and new construction. Looks like the next hand is Mary Perkins Williams.
Thank you, County Manager. I want to compliment the officials with looking at drainage, because drainage is a serious problem in Pitt County throughout, from Grifton, which is the lower end of the cone of the county, and all the way up to Bethel. And it's been years that I've seen good drainage being done, and it's messing up the land and property owners' potentials. So that was a very positive move as it relates to environmental. So my compliments to you on that. And I'm sure the citizen would appreciate it. Here's my, but when you look at what's happening throughout the nation as it relates to disasters, and we have been very blessed this year with not having serious disasters, issues that we have to deal with relating to Mother Nature. What I'm wondering about is, are we prepared if that blessing change? As we need to be able to communicate throughout the county. We need to be able to know how to address the various water, because water is a problem. And we've been blessed not to have a tornado come through, and I'm glad you did buy the bucket truck. These are things that I've heard through the nation, but here's my concern. How do we move from one end of the county to another in area of communicating throughout and being prepared to communicate? I thought about Grifton when it had, it was out for 5 days during Matthew before we realized that they did not have any lights. And eventually it took some manipulation with the state and everybody. So what I'm saying is, as we take those broader look and those more in-depth look as it relates to disasters, Mother Nature, and communication, that we become prepared and have more of a diverse look into those areas so that we can address, because when we went to one state for our national conference, they had dredged their entire river that ran through that state, that county, that city, and had found very positive use for it. Those kind of visions really helps in the long run when you look at the impacts of disaster. So I appreciate you looking into that. And I'm not criticizing, but I'm saying let's stay on top of it and be prepared, because we've been blessed with disasters this year. And I thank you for a very top-notch presentation and answering some questions that I've not known before. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Thank you. I just want to ask you, Madam Manager and Deputy Brian Barnett, do you have what you need from us to move forward to the next step?
We do, yes. So we will proceed unless the board directs us otherwise now. We will proceed forward with the plan that we've presented to you. You will see these projects again in your budget. We will tweak our thoughts further based on the discussion that we've had today. And we will also, based upon your motion, continue to move forward with the Sheriff's Administration Building. Do you need anything further, Brian? And the ARP workshop will be on the 21st. So we can discuss those projects further. If there's any immediate direction there now, we can take it. Otherwise, we'll be prepared to discuss further the community input and potential projects for longer term and more immediate funding on the 21st of February. And then your next meeting will be, your next regular meeting will be Monday, February 7th. Anything else? Anything else? Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Nunley?
Just going to move to adjourn.
So second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk?
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner McGawhorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Good work, and meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Mike.